most of the eye stuff that we do, we don't really think about, right? We don't really control our eyes like we control our hand, where I think like, oh, I should do this more, or I should stand differently, or watch my posture. So most of the eye stuff is pretty subconscious. It's only when we go into like I said earlier, like gestures with the eyes, where we do like an eye roll that can be a little bit more expressive, or like a more kind of learned or deliberate action. But one of the biggest differences that is from the pursuit to like a regular eye dart, or even like darting around in a room and looking for stuff, is just how the eye moves fundamentally. So our eye is just like, it's basically like the eyeball, right? Then there's the iris, or this, yeah, that's the lens, but the iris is the colorful part. And then you have the pupil, right? So our eyes are basically, so they're round, right? And there's big muscles pulling them around. So one thing that we have to know is we don't really move the eyeball around, right? Obviously, we're just rotating. That allows us to do very, very quick motion, because we're not really accelerating a lot of force or a lot of weight that needs to walk around. It's just, it rotates, so the center of gravity of the eyeball stays very much the same, so we can do actually quite quick motion. And most of the motion that we do with our eyes is going to be very, very quick. So if I look from like one side of the room to the other side of the room and my head is locked, this is very, very quick. There's almost nothing in between. Let's say we have the character look to the left. Let's key that here. And then later on here, we have him look to the right. So obviously right now, this is not correct, because if I play this, it's going to be very slow. That's not how our eyes work. So when we look at the actual animation curves here, I only really use the TX. Does everybody know what I mean when I draw this? This is the extreme where he looks left. This is the extreme where he looks right. I personally do one frame, just one frame. But this, what I just drew here, I would say is wrong. The timing would be right, but the spacing is not. Let me show you what I mean. But first of all, if I do my character animation and I want to just block in a dart, I would always just keep it in step. My pupils, I would always keep in step. The only exception if they are following an object, if they're talking to somebody, if they're walking around, this kind of things, then we can have actual pursuit motion. But even then, sometimes we break apart a little bit, or we have a pursuit motion where we follow another person's face, for example, but we will dart around on their face, because we're not constantly just staring into one eye. We are kind of bouncing around a little bit. So you would have a smooth motion that is broken up by small darts every now and then a little bit. So when I say this could work, if I play that, for the most part, it's going to be looking okay. It's going to be looking good. Nobody will complain. It's only when we have characters with really big eyes and really small pupils that it becomes a little bit stroby. So in this case, it's a little bit questionable, because if you compare the two frames, right now there's a white space that we don't cover when we do that, which is fine, but it might feel a little bit too stroby, where it just happens very, very quickly. But it's such a natural phenomenon that we are used to it, so nobody will really question it. So I said maybe one in between is fine. So let's say we just set a key here, and we just make it in, like put it in spline. So now we have one in between. If you play this now, it looks way too slow. It might not to you yet, but you'll get used to it, and it will look way too slow. So the spacing is like this, which is way too even. So what we want to do is we want to amplify one of the spacings. And what I usually do is I always favor the goal, so the second frame, and I go somewhere around here. So it's basically almost there. So in my curves, it would look something like I would probably use the twin machine and just put it on 90. Sometimes 90 is not enough. But now if you compare the frames, so this is all the way to the left. The next frame is almost there, and the third frame just arrives. And I can tell you that right now it feels a lot better, but this jump is still too big. So I would probably go ahead and Just scale that up a little bit more. Usually I go to like 95%. So it's literally almost there. It's just the tiniest bit of cushion at the end. Let's just play that and see how it feels. But it will feel almost instantaneously, but we have this tiny bit of visual cushion that just takes the edge off, so it's not as stroby. Basically what this does, these 2 frames, they just finish the move, so our brain is satisfied and knows what happened. That's how you would do an eye dart. And that's how I do 95% of my eye darts. Like pretty much all of them.